just want to make sure that that works before we get started here today. And all right, a bunch of you are hopping on. That's awesome. There are already 73 of you, so that is great. I'm going to mute this. Oh, there we go. It's good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. So Dr. Saunders is going to do a little teaching for us. We're excited that you guys are here. I just want to remind you that Dr. Saunders is a doctor, but he is not your doctor. And so we do ask that you chat with your healthcare provider before you implement any of the things that we're talking about today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen just to do this little presentation, if you will. And I'm going to make sure we're working. Yes, we are working. Hello, YouTubers, and those of you on Facebook. We are excited that you're here. So I'm going to change my view. And give me a second here. And I will share this. Can you see that well, Dr. Saunders?
I can see it. Yeah, looks great.
Okay, awesome.
That's a picture of me.
You know, I thought it was fitting because it said the top 5 most interesting facts or interesting things. And I thought, oh, perfect picture of those two. But I'm excited to talk about this. And so we're going to go ahead and dig in, you guys. This will be kind of fun. Feel free to ask your questions. I won't be able to see all of them, but we will get to them shortly. Here we go. Let's start off with number 1. Okay, so top 5 most interesting facts about type 2 diabetes. Number 1, your blood sugar may be higher when you wake up. Boy, if we don't hear this a lot on the webinars. People hop on and say, what is happening? I haven't eaten for like 10 hours. Why is my blood sugar high when I wake up? What's going on, Dr. Saunders?
That's the whole thing. That's why it's so surprising, is that people like all night long, they haven't eaten, their stomach's empty, they're hungry, they want to eat something, they check their blood sugar and it's high. And it's like, what the heck? I haven't eaten in 10 hours. How could it possibly be high? There's a whole bunch of things that go into blood sugar. What makes blood sugar high or low? It's not just one thing. It's not just that you eat. Yes, when you eat, you dump sugar into your blood. That's one thing. But then you have trillions of cells in your body that are going to take up that glucose and use it for energy, or make it into fat, or do whatever they do with it. And so it's not just like just because I eat, the blood glucose goes up. For example, stress can make the blood glucose go up. And there's something called glucagon. When you release glucagon, your liver actually makes sugar. And that's called gluconeogenesis. Glucose, sugar, neo is new. Genesis is to create. So it's creating new sugar out of what? Out of amino acids, really. So the liver can create the sugar with the glucagon goes up. So what makes the glucagon go up? Well, guess what? When your stomach is empty and you haven't eaten anything and you don't have any glucose coming in, and then your blood sugar starts dropping low, then your pancreas goes, oh no, we haven't eaten anything, our stomach's empty. We better start doing gluconeogenesis. We better start making new sugar. So then it puts out some glucagon, and your liver starts saying, oh, let's make some sugar. So the liver starts putting out sugar either from storage, or storage meaning the glycogen, it's like the starch that's stored in the liver cells. So it can break out the glycogen and start cutting them off and throwing glucose out into the blood. Or from protein, making the blood sugar. So then that makes the blood sugar start going up. But then at the same time, when you wake up, guess what's happening? Your adrenal glands put out a whole bunch of cortisol. And I don't mean a little bit, I mean like 10 times what your cortisol was. It just shoots up to 10 times higher than its normal dose. And then it'll gradually go down, and by the evening, it'll be back down to a low level again. So now the cortisol is high, and cortisol makes you resistant to insulin. So now your blood sugar's going up because you're making this, you're pulling it out of your liver, but at the same time now you're resistant to insulin, and so your cells can't take in all that glucose, so the glucose just keeps going up, and that's why that happens. And it's called the dawn effect or the morning effect, and it's well known, it's well documented, and it's kind of an important thing to understand because it is an indicator that you have insulin resistance. If you don't have insulin resistance, you don't see the dawn effect. Normal people who have who don't have insulin resistance, their blood glucose starts going up, and then they release some insulin, and then it'll immediately come back down to normal, and it doesn't keep going up. So the dawn effect is a marker for insulin resistance. That's why in the book, if you look at the diabetes solution kit, and it tells you when to measure your blood sugar, it says you should measure your blood sugar in the morning before you eat breakfast. And that would be, or after you get up. And that morning blood glucose tells you, because if it goes high, that means you're insulin resistant. If it's normal all the time, if it's between 70 and 90, you're good. You don't have insulin resistance, and it's okay.
All right. Awesome. Okay, let me reshare here. I clicked off of it on accident, so. All right, number 2 on our top 5 most interesting facts about type 2 diabetes. Sugar-free sweeteners may cause your blood sugar to rise. I know you guys don't want me to read number 2, but we talk about this a lot. In fact, we'll usually say, don't eat anything sweet. Dr. Saunders will say that. And people will say, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? But what about monk fruit? What about stevia? Isn't that natural? What do you think, Dr. Saunders?
Okay, so this is a very important thing to understand, because the marketing for diabetes is if it doesn't have calories, then it doesn't count. And the fact is that's wrong. It does count. Everything that you taste sweet tastes sweet inside your intestines. We think we only have taste buds on our tongue. Well, the taste buds on the tongue are the only ones that register in your brain as that tastes sweet. But you actually have taste receptors all the way through your intestines to taste what's going on inside there. And they look for certain things, like, is there salt there? Is there sugar there? Is there vitamin B12? Is there divalent cations, minerals? So when the taste of sweet happens in your intestines, it tells your pancreas to put out more insulin. So then you make more insulin. And so actually the sweet taste is a problem because it can make your insulin resistance even worse than if you were to eat sugar. And many studies have shown it is worse than sugar. And if you look at things like diet sodas, when they tested diet soda versus regular soda in people, they just let them eat whatever they want, whatever their normal diet is. And they just follow the people drinking diet soda versus the people drinking regular sodas. And the people drinking diet sodas have more insulin resistance, more diabetes, and they gain more weight than people drinking sugar sodas. And everybody goes, that's crazy. There's no calories in there. Yeah, but here's the problem. Those sweeteners are up to 300 times sweeter than sugar. 300 times sweeter than sugar. That's a lot. And so the very tiny amount is going sweet, 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 and going sugar, sugar, sugar. And then your pancreas is going, oh my gosh, all of this sweet, we're going to need a whole bunch of insulin. And so you make a whole bunch of insulin, you get more and more insulin resistant. And the insulin tells your body to put on fat. That's what it does. Insulin is the hormone that tells your body to make sugar into fat and to put on fat, and don't use fat for energy. So it causes a lot of insulin resistance. Therefore, avoid artificial sweeteners. Yes, monk fruit is not good for you. Stevia is not good for you if you have any kind of insulin resistance.
All right. Okay, let's go back to figure out what number 3 is. Top 5 most interesting facts about type 2 diabetes. Number 3, early testing for diabetes included the tasting of urine. What?
Okay, think about this. How are you going to know if someone has diabetes? Well, at first it was because someone who was urinating, and in those days they didn't have toilets and flush it down. They would whatever pee outside and everything. And it was noticed by, I don't know if it was Hippocrates or one of the other Greek doctors, that said, hey, the flies are attracted to that guy's urine. I wonder what's in it. And they tasted, they dip in, they go, your urine tastes sweet. And then there's other people that come to the doctor, and this is way back in Greek time. This is thousands of years ago. And so other people come to the doctor, and they're peeing like crazy, and they say, Doc, I'm peeing like crazy. And they go, that's called diabetes. And that other guy, that had sugar in it. And so they taste it and they go, it's bland. So they called that diabetes insipidus. Insipid means bland. So there's diabetes mellitus. Mellitus is like mel, the word for sugar or honey. So it was honey tasting urine or bland tasting urine, diabetes mellitus or diabetes insipidus. So it turns out these are two way different illnesses. They happen to have the same effect of peeing too much. And so that's how doctors up until, modern times, up until 100 years ago, that's the only way they could tell. They would test before they could test for sugar. The test was to taste it.
Wow. So glad we've advanced. You're not having to do that. All right. Top 5 most interesting facts about type 2 diabetes. Let's go to number 4. Type 2 diabetes is the most common type of diabetes, affecting 90 to 95% of people with diabetes. Now, we talk a lot about type 2. So, and you kind of mentioned this just a second ago, but what about this other 5 to 10%? What is that? And actually,
so the other 5.
Here's number 5.
Okay.
Type 1 and type 2 are not similar. So we're going to talk about both of those.
Okay. So, and number 4, being the most common, it was not the most common 100 years ago. So in the 1920s, diabetes type 1 was the most common, and that's that other 5%. And type 2 diabetes has become the most common. So if you look back to the early 1900s, the average American ate about 20 pounds of sugar a year. Imagine that, 20 pounds. You get those 5-pound bags. That's 4 5-pound bags a year. That's a lot of sugar. And you hardly ever saw type 2 diabetes at all. It was all type 1 diabetes. And so the word diabetes came to be equivalent to type 1. So anybody who said diabetes, you meant type 1, because type 2 was really rare. And then people started eating more sugar, and sugar started being put into more things. And then they invented breakfast cereals, and they had all this stuff. You could get chocolate milk, and everybody says, oh, chocolate milk is really good for you because it has calcium. And so all the mothers thought, oh, I'm going to give my kids calcium by giving them chocolate milk. And I'm going to give them Cocoa Puffs for breakfast because that's got vitamins in it, and all that stuff. So, and people believe that stuff, so they started giving it to their children. And then the children started growing up with that stuff. And then we started seeing type 2 diabetes. And in the 1970s, when I was in school, 1970s, 1980s, type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes, AODM. That was what it was called. And then type 1 diabetes was childhood onset diabetes, because people with type 1 generally lost their pancreas. The pancreas quit functioning when they were babies or when they were little. So after a while, we started seeing, as more and more sugar is being eaten, we started seeing children with adult onset diabetes. And it became kind of funny to say, this 10-year-old kid has adult onset diabetes. No, he's a kid. So everybody started saying, well, let's just call them type 1 and type 2 instead. And now we can see 5-year-olds with adult onset diabetes, type 2. And now type 2 has become the, by far, 90, it's right around 90%, like 8% are type 1. But the type 1 cases, the prevalence in society hasn't changed over the years. But type 2 has clearly increased in such a dramatic fashion that it could easily be called a pandemic. We have a pandemic of type 2 diabetes, but not type 1 diabetes. And it's really all about eating sugar, and really all about eating sugar. So think back, what did I say, 20 pounds of sugar a year? That's a lot of sugar, right? And if you lived in the early 1900s, guess how much people eat now? How much on average? So on average, you eat your weight in sugar every year. If you weigh 300 pounds, you're eating 300 pounds of sugar a year. If you weigh 150 pounds, you're eating 150 pounds of sugar a year. So overall, the average sugar consumed in the United States every year is equal to the weight in people. And so it's an awful lot, and it's 10 times compared to what people ate 100 years ago. So that's where this 95% came in. It's been a gradual increase over time. So now we can go to number 5. Number 5, adult onset versus childhood onset, type 2 versus type 1. What is the difference, and why do they have the same name? Well, they have the same name for the same thing. You got diabetes mellitus, sugar diabetes, and diabetes insipidus is the bland urine diabetes. So the diabetes insipidus is a pituitary problem that causes you to pee a lot. And so the word diabetes just means peeing a lot. So any disease that makes you pee a lot is called diabetes. And so that's why we have to type them out: diabetes insipidus, diabetes mellitus, type 1 diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus. So type 1 and type 2 are opposite illnesses. Type 1 is where the pancreas quits working. It doesn't make insulin. And because it doesn't make insulin, you can't bring glucose or amino acids into your cells. You starve to death. People with type 1 diabetes, they can eat all they want and they'll starve to death because you have to have insulin or you can't survive. So what about type 2? Type 2 diabetes is too much insulin. It's eating too much sugar. Every time you eat sugar, every time you eat an artificial sweetener, your insulin goes up. Insulin goes up, insulin goes up. Every time you eat something, insulin goes up. And so you have this high level of insulin. And after a while, your cells start getting, whoa, they get too much. They're just filled up with too much sugar and they block off all the insulin. Forget it. We can't take anymore. So now the insulin doesn't work. So then the blood sugar goes up and it makes you pee a lot. So they have the same name, diabetes mellitus. They have the same name, but they're two opposite illnesses. One is not enough. One is too much. So that's why they're not the same. They're actually very different.
Another thing that I think is really interesting is, sometimes I get to chat with some of you, and often after you find out you have diabetes, you're not even sure which type you have. The doctors didn't tell you. They just said you had diabetes, which I thought was really interesting. And it also makes me wonder if, and comment in the chat about this. Are you being, is your diabetes being explained to you? What is happening in the body? I'm just curious. When you find out, when you did find out, did they give you an explanation? Like Dr. Saunders has, many times, if you've been on these webinars, he'll talk to you about many different analogies about what's going on with the body and how it all works. And I just am curious if you're getting that same kind of information from your doctor. I hope you are. There are many good doctors out there that are doing that. But I'm just hearing from people that have no idea. And usually they tell me what medication they're on, and then that usually tells me if they have type 1 or type 2, obviously. But anyway, I think it's interesting. So this was great, Dr. Saunders. Thank you. I hope you guys found this very interesting as well. Delbert says no. His doctor did not tell him. Casey said not in any detail. Rayanne said, my primary doctor told me to make an appointment with an endocrinologist, but never told me why. And I didn't know what that was, so I didn't make the appointment. Isn't that crazy? I know. No from Jan. Two Jans, Jan M and Jan D, both said no. Very interesting. Okay. Mary said, I didn't get any explanation, just started me on metformin. That's sad. Is it because they don't have time, Dr. Saunders, or what's going on? Or do you want to plead the fifth? You don't want to answer.
I don't want to answer, but I'll tell you this, that I am really surprised at how little we were taught about this kind of thing. And that the endocrinologists that I've worked with, and I go to conferences, endocrinology conferences on diabetes, and these are diabetes specialists. This is all they do is diabetes, and they don't know. And they get up and they say, we don't know why diabetes type 2 happens. I'm like, what? What? Leslie knows. I should connect them to you, Leslie. Tell them.
Yeah, right. I want to show you guys something else that's kind of funny now. This is just random on the internet. I don't know this person, but actually I'll try to hide the name. And then I want to just show you so you have an idea here of what this 150 pounds of sugar would look like. So there's 150 pounds. This guy lost 150 pounds. But this is how much sugar, what's the average person weigh these days? I guess I don't even know. Let's say they weigh 150 pounds. That's how much sugar is being consumed in a year per individual. It's a lot. It's a lot of bag of Skittles, or M&Ms, and here's the thing. That's not just candy like that. Sugar's hidden in so many things. We picked up a rotisserie chicken yesterday. Guess what the first ingredient was? Sugar.
Was it really?
Yes. And I got it from a good place that I thought, it's a little kind of like a boutique meat place, whatever. Oh man. I think you guys would be shocked if marinara sauces, all of those kinds of things have sugar.
I get my rotisserie chicken from Costco. I'm going to have to look.
Yeah. Okay. So we typically do too. This one was close to my house. And so I thought we were in a hurry and I was like, what could I feed my family quickly? And hey, it wasn't a fast food place, but still sugar. Come on. I mean, no wonder it tasted so good. I didn't notice it afterward. But anyway, pay attention to this stuff. It's hard. And I'll tell you also, I have kids, middle school, young high school kid, and they love sugar. They love sugar, and it is hard to keep it out of their bodies. It's hard because they don't, they're invincible and they don't think it affects them. So anyway. Okay, here we go. Let's read some of these comments here. First of all, Sandra said, thank you so much to Joe Barton and the crew at Barton Publishing, and as well, of course, Dr. Saunders for all of your help and resources. This program has truly been a blessing for me. And I want to talk about that. We're talking probably about the webinar. We also have the Diabetes Solution Kit, which you can find. Where is mine? Okay, it's down there somewhere. You can find at bartonwebinar.com. This past Friday, I met with my endocrinologist for a follow-up since I was hospitalized recently. Type 2 diabetes got out of control and was given insulin and then was prescribed for me then was prescribed for me when discharged. Didn't want to live with needles and wanted a better lifestyle. Kept praying for an alternative and found your kit. Started on October 4th making diet changes, eating 2 meals a day, exercise more regularly, and take chromium, which you can find in Synachroma, by the way. What's amazing is that when I had my blood sugar tested at the doctor's office, my blood glucose came in at not 100, but actually 83. I was so happy. Even when I used to take Jardiance, it wasn't that low. So I definitely will stay on this program. Love that even if I cheat a little, I know how to fix my blood sugar.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Good.
awesome?
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And we do hear that from some other people too. You know, someone will say, okay, we went off the rails over the weekend and now we had to, but we know how to get our blood sugar back in check. And so they go back to like phase one of the diabetes solution kit and they're able to regain that control. And, you know, and then we have people, I mention this all the time, but I like for people to know this. As you go through the phases, you start to introduce new things again and see how your body responds to it. Well, one guy couldn't tolerate sugar-free gum, but he could handle drinking a little bit of juice. His blood sugar would stay fine. So everyone's just a little bit different. But I feel I liken the diabetes solution kit to biohacking your body because you're getting to see how your body responds to things, how your personal body responds to sugar and different foods. So if you haven't purchased or used the diabetes solution kit, you can get it for under $20. Very worth it. Or make an appointment with Dr. Saunders if you live near him, but it won't be $20. And use code webinar25. You'll save 25% actually. So there you go, cheaper. Okay, here we go. We better get moving. All right. Carvin says, my doctor is insisting of putting me on insulin. My sugar was 117 fast today. A1C was 7.8 2 months ago. What is the plus or minus of insulin versus pills?
Okay. If you have type 1, you definitely need insulin. If you have type 2, you definitely should not be on insulin. That's the difference. The pills mostly increase insulin, and so mostly the pills should not be used at all either. What is it that you should do? Well, your next step, Marvin, is to test. And the tests you need are hemoglobin A1C, along with a glucose level, along with a C-peptide and an insulin level. And you put those 4 of them together, and you can do something called an insulin resistance index. Most of the time, the lab will do it all by itself, but you don't need that. And you can look at what those show. So, for example, let's say, Marvin, you have your blood glucose is 150 and your C-peptide is 2.5 and your insulin level is 20. An insulin level of 20 on a fasting specimen is way too high. Your C-peptide is telling us that your long-term insulin is high and your blood glucose is high. So they're all high. What that means is you have insulin resistance. So if your insulin is too high, why would you add insulin? Does that make sense to you at all? That makes no sense to do that, because all it's going to do is create more insulin resistance and do more damage to your body. So rather than looking at, do I need pills or insulin, do some tests first and say, do I lack insulin? So now let's say your C-peptide was 0.5 and your insulin level was 2 and your blood sugar was 200. What does that tell you? That tells you have a deficiency of insulin, that you're not making enough insulin and to bring your blood glucose down. So you have type 1 or type 1.5. Type 1.5 is kind of like a cross between type 1 and type 2, and that is you don't make enough insulin, but you do have some, but you're insulin resistant, so that what you're taking is not enough and your blood sugar goes up really high. And so that's actually not hard to deal with. It's actually easier than type 1. And you may not need insulin, but some do. So that's the way to look at it, because until you have a diagnosis, you shouldn't be starting treatment.
Okay. Parvin says I am type 2.
Yeah, but what's your insulin level?
I don't think I can see anything else. Okay. So I see a lot of questions are coming in, which is wonderful. If you can post those in the Q&A, that would be great. It's a little easier for us to manage those there. So Lourdes says, how does one lower triglycerides? By exercise?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. Why does triglycerides go up? Triglycerides are the fats that we use to burn for energy. We use fatty acids, and they come in the form of triglycerides. And so when your fat cells are putting out triglycerides, when you don't have enough energy, you make triglycerides. But there's a problem with that when you have insulin resistance. So when your cells are full of glucose and you have insulin resistance, those triglycerides can't be used. Insulin tells your body, don't use fat for energy. Don't use it. Store it. So now you have all these triglycerides around. You need those. You need that. You need that energy, but you can't use it. So you actually decrease the amount of ATP, which is the real energy. And so you have less energy available, and the triglycerides go up. I have seen people with their triglycerides. I used to draw blood in my office. I had a phlebotomist, not me, but phlebotomist drawing blood, and the vials of blood would set in the little container there, and every once in a while someone would come in and literally half, all the fat would float to the top. Half of the blood was fat, and triglycerides were over 1,000. And that's somebody who's really insulin resistant. So yes, exercise can help improve insulin sensitivity so your triglycerides go down. But really the key is getting the insulin down by not eating glucose, carbohydrates, sweet things, avoiding sweet things. So if you go on phase 1 of the program, then your insulin level will go down and the triglycerides will just automatically drop, because then you'll be able to use fat for energy again.
All right. Kimberly says, with a glucometer versus continuous glucose meter, are we really just looking for ranges due to both being different numbers, or is one better than the other for measuring your sugar levels?
One's not okay. So instead of looking at it as this is my absolute sugar level, it's better to look at it as these are the trends that I'm seeing in this. So the finger stick glucose meter is probably a little better. The continuous glucose monitor, they allow 20%. So think about it this way: if you have if your actual blood sugar is 100, 20% means it could be 120. Your reading could say 120 or 80, and that's still within the range of the meter. So a lot of people use their finger stick glucose meter to calibrate their continuous glucose monitor, and the program has a calibration on it, so you can do that.
All right. Melissa says, when I exercise, my glucose goes up. I was playing pickleball 2 hours, no food, only water, 210. I am height and weight aligned. It happens whenever I exercise. It happens all times of the day.
Okay. So there's several things that are going on here. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of factors that are involved in what your blood sugar is. So your muscles need more blood glucose, And when you exercise, you're supposed to be able to bring the glucose in without insulin. You should be able to just bring it in. Some people don't do that very well. And so when they exercise, they make more glucose so that they have more energy for their muscles, but their muscles don't suck it up like they're supposed to. So that could be an issue, and part of that could be insulin resistance as well. But if it's 200, like you said, 200, that's really high. That means you definitely have insulin resistance. But it's just interesting that the muscle cells have a mechanism to bring glucose in without insulin. So even if you're insulin resistant, it should be okay. But then what happens is when you're exercising, you mobilize something called glycogen. And glycogen is the storage form of sugar in the cells, both in the liver and in the muscle cells. So you're mobilizing the glycogen and you're not bringing glucose into your cells. So your liver's mobilizing glycogen and your sugar's going up, but you're not bringing it into the cells because your muscle cells have a bunch of glycogen. So that's all part of it. And then one other factor to consider is that the stress from exercise, yes, exercise is stress. The adrenal glands put out more cortisol. Cortisol gives you extra energy by giving you extra sugar. And it makes you insulin resistant. So all of those factors involved are going to make your sugar go up. And all those mechanisms are not really that important because the answer to the question is still exactly the same. Do phase 1 of the program and continue to exercise.
All right. Abel says, I'm confused. You say that if you have a high dawn effect sugar level, that I am insulin resistant. But what if my insulin test shows that it's a 2? Wouldn't that mean that I just don't put out enough insulin to deal with the glucagon instead of being insulin resistant?
Okay. Thank you. That's the other part. Because we just talked about this. If you have type 1.5, where your pancreas is not putting out enough insulin, then that's more of a type 1 problem where you don't have enough insulin to actually bring the glucose into your cells. So yes, you're exactly right.
Melissa says, I was diagnosed as a 1.5, 1.5 diabetic.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see here. Valerie says, question, please. I just started Synachroma and Berberine, 2 supplements that Barton offers. I'm taking 2 Synachroma per day to get it kickstarted. 1 lunch, 1 dinner, 2 Berberine. Do you suggest to take after food at 1 meal or split them between lunch and dinner?
Take them together with a meal. It's fine. Berberine is best taken twice a day. Synachroma, you could take either once or twice a day. And with Synachroma, you could even take them both together in the morning. That's not an issue at all. But the Berberine is better twice a day. So just one of each twice a day with food.
Okay, and then also Valerie says magnesium with berberine. Like, is that okay? I think is what we're saying, or maybe
Yeah.
when to take it.
Yeah, magnesium could be taken with berberine. That's fine.
And then curcumin with what supplement?
Curcumin needs to have black pepper with it. And it's best taken with food. You have to have some fat in your meal. Curcumin is very poorly absorbed, but the pepper increases the absorption by 20 times, not 20%, 20 times. It really makes a big difference.
Wow. Okay, so Paul said, if a person's on the Solution Kit program, how many pounds of sugar are we eating?
Okay.
Depends on what you're eating.
That's a great quiz question. Let me think. If I was Marilyn Voss Savant, I would answer none. Because you're doing it right and you're not eating any sugar.
And Delbert had said, just curious, how much sugar do we consume in a year if you're on the program? And that again probably depends on the phases that you're in. You know, if you're in phase 3, depends. Here, let me ask you this. So some fruits have sugar. Is that a kind of sugar we can have, or what do you think?
It counts. So you count that as a carb. So when you're doing the phase 1 of the program, you're doing 20-gram carbohydrate diet. And so if you eat fruit, you have to count that apple as 20 grams of carbohydrates, and that's all you can eat all day. So then the rest of your diet has to be, I don't know, meat.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked it up yesterday. I was talking with someone, and I think the apple we looked up was 26 carbs. I mean, we didn't subtract the fiber out of it, but there's a lot of carbs in that fruit. But I know that some people are on like phase 2 or 3, and they maybe started introducing some berries, which is a little less. But anyway, depends on where you're at in your journey. Okay, let's see. Lots of questions here in the Q&A. This is great. Gloria says, I'm faithfully working the ketogenic diet, trying to maintain good blood glucose. But I have to ask, is caloric intake at all key to weight loss, even on this diet? All protein, good fats, and only 20 carbs per day? Am I eating too many protein and fat calories? Seems weight loss should be happening easier. I'm also exercising every day. I'm 70 years old and I'm trying to lose the last 15 pounds. Thank you, Dr. Saunders and Leslie.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Do calories count? Yes, calories count. Ultimately, calories always count for something. People that say no, it's you're just your thyroid or whatever. Well, the fact is, you cannot put on weight without eating extra calories. You have to eat more calories than you consume. And so pretty much all the research has shown that, whether they look at diets or hormones or people, the people who are thin, they actually eat fewer calories than people who are overweight. So it's not a matter of calories don't count. It's that we don't count the calories because the weight's not the issue. It's insulin resistance that's the issue. And yes, you're going to start burning fat. But if you want to lose weight, you may have to decrease calories too. We've had plenty of people on here who have said, okay, I have diabetes, I have type 2 diabetes, and I want to do this program, but I don't want to lose weight. I'm at my perfect weight right now. And so I'm like, okay, you don't have to count calories. You can eat all the food you want, but just avoid the carbohydrates.
I have heard of some people who are eating too much. Someone I chatted to figured out they were eating too much fat. Actually, I think they were eating too much cheese and something else. They found that they weren't getting a lot of carbs, but they were eating a lot of cheese or a lot of dairy, maybe it was. And after they stopped that, they all of a sudden lost a lot of weight. So there's always like little things too that I feel like you can play with, I think, sometimes, and see what you tolerate well. Okay, so many questions. These are so good, you guys. Richard says A1C of 6.5, taking 2 metformin per day. Can I substitute 1 berberine for 1 metformin and gradually only 2 berberine and no metformin? First of all, Dr. Saunders would like to say you can do whatever you want. You are in control of your health. Okay, I just had to put that out there.
Okay, so having said what Leslie just said, then I'll give you some ideas of things that you might consider here. One is that the berberine essentially does what the metformin does. And yes, you can totally just replace metformin with berberine, and it's fine. It works really well. But also consider that it's not really the supplement or the medication that makes the difference in your diabetes or even in your weight or anything. The blood sugar is more related to what's going on in your body. Yes, diet has a lot to do with it, but that's not all of it. We have a ketogenic diet. I had someone in today who has diabetes, She's eating one meal a day. And her daughter came in with her. Her daughter says, "Yeah, she's doing what you said. She's gotten off all. She doesn't eat any cereals, no breads. Um, she eats 2 squares of chocolate in the afternoon after her one meal." And I said, "Well, there's your problem right there." She goes, "No, no, this is bitter chocolate. This is not dark chocolate. It's bitter. It has zero sweeteners in it." I'm like, "Oh, uh, it's just cocoa with in cocoa butter. That's all." And so she's doing everything right, and she hasn't lost weight. Her blood sugar's not down. And so I'm like, "What the heck? Eating one meal a day and staying and getting off all the carbs and sugars and everything. How could that possibly be?" So we went through her tests and everything, and it turns out that she has a lot of adrenal stress, and and so the factors that are involved in your blood glucose aren't just that supplement that you're taking or even your diet, always, because there's so many other factors, and you have to consider stress as part of it. We've had a whole webinars on stress, but so it's not just stress either, because you can overcome the stress by fasting. If you fast, you will lose weight. I guarantee it. There, and whether you're stressed or not, you could be as stressed as you want to be. But if you're not eating anything, you're going to lose weight. So, but it's not going to be healthy. I'm just put that in, right. So, uh, working out your own solution. So the kit we made was not a one size fits all kit. It seems that way, just because we try to make it to fit as many people as possible. But when you first start out, you go through this whole thing of, why am I doing this? What is my why? Where are my stressors? What am I doing? How am I going to do this? Am I going to commit to this? And how am I and how does this work? And do I need these supplements or not? Do I need this diet or not? And you go through it and do it the best way you can, but realize that you're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to tweak it till it works. And if that's the berberine, great. If it's metformin, great. If it's diet, great. If it's stress reduction, most people could get all better by reducing their stress.
And I will just a reminder to go back and watch a couple of our past webinars over the past month. You're going to find Dr. Saunders talking more about this and how important this is as far as stress relief. I think one of the webinars was metabolic mental health or something like that. And I would really encourage you to go check that out. So go to bartonwebinar.com. You'll find a link to our YouTube channel and watch those. I'm still getting a lot of questions about sugar. And so I don't know if people weren't on yet when we were talking about this or what, but people really want to use sugar, Dr. Saunders. And just a reminder, he said no. He says no in phase one, no sugars. Then I think someone else was asking about bread. What about bread?
Yeah, I have a problem with that too. I am a lover of bread, and I love good bread, and I love sourdough bread, and I make my own bread, and I bake my bread, and anyone who bakes bread is my best friend. Um, but I when I did phase one of the program, I went off bread entirely, and now it's okay. You know what? I eat bread, but I eat it intermittently. Like I'll get a whole wheat sprouted wheat sourdough loaf from a local place that they make it in small batches, and they bake it fresh. And I'll do that once a month or something, and then I'll live on that for a week, and then I'll go back to not having bread for a while. I don't know. Bread's okay, but sugar is out. Processed sugar, just avoid it at all costs.
And see how you feel after you've done phase one. If you want to try to incorporate some kind of bread, after you've gone through the program, try it. I have found when I live next to a place that bakes sourdough. And so every once in a while we'll grab some too. I don't feel great, even with sourdough. I don't feel great, especially in the morning. So I don't eat a lot of it. But see how you feel. See how your numbers look when you consume it. Okay, Wayne says from my recent HbA1c lab results, 7.2. And doctor's visit, I'm clinically diabetic. The doctor only prescribed I monitor my blood glucose for the next 3 months for a follow-up visit. I use a Freestyle Libre 3 CGM. I see fluctuations and patterns throughout the day from eating to exercising. My questions are: one, why does my glucose reading go up during sleep from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m.? Two, as I was not prescribed any blood glucose lowering medication, and I see my average glucose level between 90 and 150, what glucose level affects a person's vision?
Okay, so the question about why does it go up in the morning, that's the dawn effect. That's your stomach's empty, you're not getting any glucose in from your intestines, and so your liver starts producing glucose. So that's what makes it go up at nighttime. And then in the morning, when your cortisol goes up, then your insulin resistance goes up, and then it shoots up even more. So that's why it does that. And so the other thing about you don't have anything to lower your glucose, affecting the vision is usually fluctuations. Like if it goes up to 300, what happens is there's an osmotic pressure difference. Osmotic means the amount of solutes, or like salts and sugar, that's in the solution outside your eyes is much higher than inside your eyes. So it tends to want to push into there, and your eyeballs actually grow and shrink, and so it's affecting your vision. So at that point, that's not the big issue, whether you have blurred vision or not. It's really if your retinas don't get enough energy. So like with insulin resistance, you don't get glucose into the brain very well. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. That's where you start seeing the real problems, when you don't have enough energy. So these levels of between 90 and 200, that's not going to be an issue for your eyeballs. But it's a great time to start on phase 1 of the program and start doing that, because that's actually more important to fix the problem than any medication you could take anyway.
Okay, Sib says, will eating fruit on a daily basis contribute to diabetes on a daily basis? I eat blueberries, strawberries, papaya, blackberry, and our favorite, pineapples.
Yay. Yes. If you have type 2 and you're eating those fruits, they are going to contribute to your blood glucose and contribute to the diabetes and contribute to insulin resistance.
Casey says, I've gotten 6 out of 8 Tepezza infusions for thyroid eye disease. Is my type 2 the same as others with type 2? Treatment the same?
Yes. And in fact, it's definitely the same. So for that eye disease, one of the problems, the main problem of that for the thyroid is an energy problem. It's mitochondrial, getting enough energy. Because the eyes are super sensitive to not having enough energy. So being on a ketogenic diet helps produce something, makes your liver causes your liver to make something called ketones. And the ketone bodies can be used in your eyes, and it'll improve the function of the retinas, and it improves the function of the brain.
Okay. Gary said, what is considered good fasting insulin?
70 to 90. Oh, insulin, I'm sorry.
Insulin.
Insulin, good fasting insulin should be around 5. So if it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's okay, but right around 5.
Okay. Rosalind said, when I don't eat protein when trying to fast, lately my blood sugar has been elevated. What can I do? I want to fast.
Okay.
Eat protein.
What?
When I don't eat protein when trying to fast, lately my blood sugar has been elevated. Oh, okay, now I understand. What can I do? I want to fast.
Okay. So, so if you want to fast, then fast, and don't take the blood sugar into account, because that's not an issue. You have to allow your body to correct that, because there's a lot of abnormalities in how your metabolism is working, and the fast is like shutting off your computer and turning it back on again when it's acting up. The computer should work right all the time, and everything should flow properly um, through the chips, and everything should work. But things just start not working right, and sometimes you have to turn it off and turn it on again. Well, in the process of turning it off and turning it on again, you're going to see all those weird things happening. Blood sugar shoots up. Why? Who knows? Your glucagon starts getting released, and you make a whole bunch of blood sugar and it goes up. There's a whole bunch of factors that are involved in that. The point is that you have a metabolic abnormality, and the fasting resets it. So allow that reset to happen, and it has to have to give it time to shut off completely. And for most people, that's about 3 days. For some, it's 5 days. But I've had somebody go as long as, well, 2 weeks, but he was on a broth. He was drinking broth. So,
Okay, time is up. Thank you, Dr. Saunders.
hasta
Have a
mañana.
great rest of your day. Hopefully your voice stays. I bet you have
Yeah.
the tips and tricks to do. So we'll see ya. Thank you. And everyone, check out bartonwebinar.com. Use code webinar25 to save 25%. That's it for us today. I know we have questions we didn't get through, so come back next time. We also have another webinar tomorrow called Home Cures That Work, where Dr. Saunders is going to come and talk to us about other really interesting things about our health and our diet and those types of things that will be very beneficial to us. So come back. If you haven't registered, go to Barton Webinar.